define the word Moor in just a second. But you're correct in the sense that what makes one a Moor is basically the lifestyle and principles and science that one applies to their life. Living by the four principles of love, truth, peace, and freedom. And if you don't live by those four principles, you'll be pursued by the fifth, which is justice. So that is what makes one a Moor in a sense. But you have to understand that given certain periods and time frames in history, depending on the time frame, the language, any individual that possesses melatonin would be referred to as a Moor.
Okay.
So,
but that doesn't make him a Moor. That's where I was getting a little not confused, but the melon does not really make him a Moor. You have to follow the principles of a Moor in order to be a Moor. Is that correct?
Correct. I mean, the possession of melatonin can easily place one in that category.
All right.
Then there's a second step. You know, there's levels to everything. Then there's a step of living by the principles.
That's how they teach you, how you was beaten, how you came together and loved the abolitionists, how you was beaten, how you came together, how we all American people. That's what you love. That's what our people love. They don't want the knowledge of self. They don't want to be a nation. Show me where black people is a nation. You don't even talk to each other. You don't have no principles. You don't have no constitution. You don't have no additional laws. You don't have no general laws. You don't have no supreme laws. You don't have a black prophet. So what are you talking about? You're a product of America. You're suited, booted product.
Muslims are from the West, known as the Maghrib. Okay, a lot of the Indian chiefs, when I get into some of their names, you'll see that they actually had Muslim names. Okay, a Muslim and a Muslim is not the same thing. A Muslim basically adheres to the science of the universe and the teachings. That's why at one time you hear a lot of individuals, they don't say it anymore, but a lot of people used to say everyone is a Muslim because it refers to the movement of the body, the definition I just gave. Muslims, a lot of today's Muslims refer to the creed of the religious creed of Haditha, which is studying and becoming subjects to the Quran and upholding the Quran over a lot of other teachings. So, and it's no disrespect, but that's just, we have to understand that when we deal with those two terms, it's important to point that out, that basically all Moors are not Muslims, and Moors are not Muslims. They can be, but that's not to go hand in hand. Moors are Muslims, Muslims of the West, the Maghrib. So I wanted to make that clear.
And also, Moors, when we look at that ism, that Islamism, not only does it include practice, but it also includes a distinct doctrine. We have a distinct doctrine as expressed by the holy divine prophet, Noble Drew Ali. We must remember, Islamism, is that new? Is that the old-time religion? Old-time religion. It's the old-time religion. So the prophet did not bring something new. It's always been here, just expressed a little bit differently in regards to customs and traditions. Islam was in ancient Egypt. This book by our dear brother Sheikh Anta Diop, The African Origin of Civilization, it talks about Islam being in ancient Kemet. Islam was Ma'at. Do you know what Ma'at is? Truth, justice, harmony, reciprocity. That's Ma'at. That's Islam. And like we talked about last night briefly about the prophet in a garb that he wore, the plume in his turban. One of the meanings of that plume, that is the feather of Ma'at.
So let's go back to the 5 tribes. Okay. And I'll label Seminole, Creek, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Cherokee. These names are very important because the European made them nations, which means that there were thousands hundreds of thousands of Moors under each one of these titles, but they fixed it so that only those that were desirable to the European became the civilized. So they had to create a new name for all the civilized ones and then put them into this 5 civilized tribes. Does that make sense? I mean, do you understand that?
I understand.
Okay. Now listen carefully. Here we go with Black America. El, Bey, Day, Al, and Ali. Those are titles of nobility. These 5 titles belong to the 5 tribes, civilized tribes. They are, El means Cherokee, Bey means Choctaw, Day, D-E-Y, means Seminole, Al means Crete, Ali means Chickasaw. The title El means God of power. Bey means ruler or landlord. Day means knowledgeable. Al means the same as El, but El is masculine and Al is goddess. All means exalted or most high. You get it?
Right.
Now, I know you've heard of Els and Beys and Days. All of that come from the Moorish nation. All of that. And the Europeans, tied all of that into their so-called 5 civilizations to keep us more confused.
Look how we smash it right here. Demise of the Archduke Ferdinand of Tyrol, founder of the collection of the imperial commissioners appointed to revise his will. On the folio. Folio means the land. That's the land plat. That's the catalog that is listed in the abstract title. The occupational coup d'etat government's right to do business on the natural ancestral allodial land in lieu of paying perpetually the true land owners, i.e. the nationals. Okay? Of this ancient document is cataloged with other objects in featherwork contained in chest number 9 and is described as a Moorish hat of beautiful, long, lustrous green, gold-hued feathers bedecked above with white and red and blue feathers. White, red, and blue. Americans. You understand? This is an American headdress he's wearing. Golden rosettes and ornaments. In front of the forehead has a beak of pure gold. The term Moorish, as here applied, can scarcely be regarded as a deceptive, but one inasmuch as Montezuma, king of the Tenochtitlan of Mexico, is subsequently designated as a Moorish king in this same inventory of 1596. So all of that, with the Aztecs being Mexicans and Siberian looking Hindus or whatever you calling them, and they was worshiping corn and cutting everybody's heads off, all of that's garbage. He was a Muslim. In 1613, its description was faithfully reproduced, and in 1621, the word Indian was substituted for Moorish. With this signal alteration, the original text was again transcribed in 1730. In 1788, however, a remarkable transformation was effected and the hat became an apron. Look at that. And the official record reads, an Indian apron of long green feathers. Look at that. You see how they reduced us Moors, you see? Still trying to get us to believe that we were something that we not. And then hating because we know the difference. So again, why would they put a slave? This is from Bahamas. Why would they put a slave with a crown on with the 3 plume feathers that we just read about? But because we done made you think that I serve, because it say I serve, this was a symbol that the slave was serving the crown. No, because the king was always the servant of the people.
All right. So now at its physical meaning, we have master of the waters. Moors were a seafaring people. We were the masters of the waters. We used waters for trade and transportation. All right? We traveled all around the globe. And what was the name of the people that traveled around the globe? Moors. And what kind of, and so if we want to get specific, who was the so-called Kemetic Navy? The Phoenicians. Phoenician seafarers were Moors. They were the masters of the water. But water also represents purity. And you can't have life without water. Water is the source of all life. If you have no water, you have no life. This is your beginning. You see? But when a European gets this, what does he do? What's the opposite of the ruler? The slave. What's the opposite of the pure and the water? The dirty and death. That's where it comes from. And can't nobody tell me that Moor doesn't go back to this, because you can't argue with it. It's the phonetic sound of the word.
It would be Moor. It would be M-R, right? Okay. But when we look at it in the hieroglyphs, it's Ma'ur, right? So it's M-A-U-R, right? Which is the Latin way of writing Mortitus or Mauritania or Morditic, right? So Moor, M-A-U-R, in ancient Comesian is seen in the hieroglyph as the owl head standing on top of what looks like a mouth with what looks like electricity on the left-hand side of it.
The ideogram, this is the owl facing forward. This is the universal symbol of wisdom. Wise old owl. So he can turn his head 360 degrees, which means he sees from all angles. He's aware. He's conscious. All right? He has the ability to see at night. He's a nocturnal creature, which means his eyes come open at night. He sees through the foolishness. He sees through the folly. He sees clearly. So the plane of illusions, the wise old owl is aware. He's not caught up because he sees. All right? Decoding the message.
Now, and it's not like we're jumping, we're not hedge hopping all the way back from the modern word more all the way back then, even though it wouldn't be a problem. Because this English is just anglicized Moabite in a lot of regard.
The vast majority of languages throughout the world, the alphabets, stem from one root. This includes the Roman Latin, the Greek, even the German, and of course our own modern-day English alphabet. It stems from the ancient Cana-Phoenician Paleo-Hebrew, Aleph, Bet. So our English letter A that begins and gives birth to our English language actually is the ancient pictograph of a bull, an ox, the ancient Cana-Phoenician Paleo-Hebrew pictograph of an ox, which is a bull with horns.
Would it be fair to say that the Moors of history and the Hebrews of history
same people?
That's what I was going to ask.
This is one of the biggest frauds that has come down the pike that causes divisions with our people.
Right. What came to split though? Because now you got a group that's saying the Moors and then the group saying.
Let's look. Even those dynamics.
Yes.
Even those dynamics. And what you'll find is most of the time that will come from people who come from what we have come to call schools of thought. However, when you go back into history, and this is one of the things that I recognize that's terribly injurious to us, even in our dealings with each other, which will demonstrate as soon as you see them getting together arguing dogma and calling it religion, because most of the masses don't get religion. And that's not an attack on anyone, that's just simply the truth.
But the Hebrews say that it's not a religion.
But listen.
Yeah, it's a nationality for them. That's
let's come. I'm not arguing that.
Right.
I am saying we are the same people. We, the Moors of the North Gate, are referred to as the Ibri, which some people call Hebrew. It is no Hebrew, it's Ibri. That's those of us who crossed the river. It cannot be emphasized enough. There is no difference between us and our brothers and sisters on the other side of the water after the land's separated, except some of us are mixed.
First of all, I'm Mizraim, I left L. I am a Moor. I recognize your garments. That's fly right there, man. That's really fly. And that fez. So peace to all you brothers. What is your nationality, bro?
I'm from Senegal.
Senegal. Okay, now let me ask you this question. In Senegal, do they refer to each other as black people, or is that something that's only here in America?
Senegal, I can say they 100% black people who be like the foundation of what happened here. Because our ancestors traveled to come here, to make it to here.
Right.
Because we are the same people.
We're the same people.
Only the oceans separate us. Because we are the same people.
We're the same people.
Only the oceans separate us.
For sure.
It's the same people cross the ocean and come here and make a family and lost a little bit their culture, and we put it back in the town.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Now, just for the record, Senegal is West Africa, right?
It's West Africa.
West Africa. So was the Senegalese interrelated with the Moorish Empire or the Moorish history?
Yes, Senegal is related to the Lara Empire because the Empire Manding, if you say the Empire Manding, it was not separation for the border before. If you say the Empire Manding, it was not separation for the border before. You said the Empire Manding is going from Senegal all the way to the Kingdom of Ghana, from Mali, Guinea, Ivory Coast, Mauritania. It was the same empire led by the king.
Those who cross the river are the Ibri, falsely called Hebrew. Some of us know it has to do with the dividing of the land. Others, based on the way the Europeans have taught the books, think it's a different people with a different religion, with some kind of special relationship with the divine creator that nobody else has. When we're all brothers, sisters, cousins, and all of us can be traced to the same families. And what you find, it is really a reflection of what has been traditionally groomed amongst our people, which is self-hatred. When you go back into the ancient world, you'll find that we were philosophical scientists. We were not what you would call dogmatists in the religious formats that you express today. As a matter of fact, in the not so much distant ancient world, mosques were universities. They were not places where you go pray, make salat, as you see traditionally now. Same thing with the synagogues.
It was school, court.
They were universities. You learned everything about life, from astrology, cosmology, philosophies, 7 liberal arts, agriculture, mathematics, calculus, etc., ephemerides, star charts, elements, metal tables, etc.,
The Moors now, as a group, right, of people, right, culminated now out of all of the ancient peoples. So when you talk about the Canaanites, when you talk about the Hittites, when you talk about the Amorites, when you talk about the Hamathites, when you talk about the Axumites, when you're talking about the Carbeans, when you're talking about the ancient Sumerians, when you're talking about the Elamites, when you're talking about the ancient Babylonians, the Macedonians, okay, then we bring it over here. The Olmecs, right? The what they call all of these, right, are Moors, right, of different regions and areas that up until 1492 functioned between the 7th century AD and up to 1492 functioned as a coherent empire.
Who Noble Jolly? Who is he?
Noble Jolly is
not that this is, believe me, the information is not new, which, as you know, when you read the case of the Sundry Free Moors, which is 1790, that come before the House of Representatives, which you read off the air. And as you can see, the issue is not new. Yet he was the first to represent the Moorish nation in proper person and make the argument to this government of their obligations to us, which many have buried in their secret societies. He brought it to the front and then brought the knowledge back, the birthright and the title names back to the Moors to make them conscious to stand up and to begin to take our place in the affairs of men. That's the first basis of the unique position that he holds in society. He came with our proper person position that gave us the legal argument that the world couldn't ignore.
So
meaning that showed that the heirs are now conscious, meaning we don't have amnesia.
All right, so he came in 1913.
Came before that, but officially he founded the movement, the activity, the organized body, the political forum for us to operate within 1913.
So and it's now 2009.
Yes, going on 2013.
So what happened? Because he came back in 1913. It's 2009, and we're like back in the dark ages.
Betrayal.
And the betrayal, or who were those who betrayed?
We don't have to tell you that. You can find some of it in the FBI papers.
COINTELPRO.
Now let's look at the United Nations. The nations of the earth came together to deal with these issues. In declarations for the rights of the child, the nations of the earth, including all of the Organization of American States, that means all the political states in the Americas, came on our behalf, and Principle 3 declared every child shall have a right to a name and nationality from birth, right? And that information was to be presented to all the people through all your institutions, your churches, your civic organizations, all institutions. But did it happen? I don't think so,
right.
Except with the Moorish movement.
So, according to scholars, our ancestors, the Moors of Old Mexam, commonly referred to as the Olmecs. Again, they're not the Olmecs. They're the people of Old Mexam who are Moors. So start calling the Olmecs Moors, because that's who we are. Right? They are the earliest known major civilization in America. So if you don't know, now you know. We're the earliest major civilization in America. A lot of Europeans know this. It stated that our ancestor civilization flourished and thrived as early as 2,500 BC. As stated in my book, Moorish Mysticism, the Aztec Empire, being a continuation of the Moors of ancient Mexam, spread from Central America, which is modern-day Mexico, to as far north as up to the Mississippi River, and as far south as into Peru, or what is known as the Inca Empire. So even what they do in Africa, they try to say, the Moors, the Arabs, and the Berbers, and the Saracens, as if they're different people. They do the same thing here. The Olmecs, the Mayans, and the Aztecs, as if they're different people. And the Incas, as if they're different people. All you gotta do is simply search Inca Fez on Google, and you'll see the Incans or Fezes.
While these were being found, more of the Olmec civilization was found, and a temple was discovered that had also the same type of people, these West African people portrayed as kings and warriors. So, when the first archaeologists found these, it says, well, these are probably just blacks that got blown across the sea and were enslaved. But you don't make huge heads portrayed with crowns of your slaves. These were obviously regents, powerful people. How did they get there that long ago? Because those heads are dated to about 3,000 years ago. So far as is known, there was no black civilization then. That came later. It appears that these were sailors and captains working with the Phoenicians. Maybe they jumped ships, maybe they got shipwrecked, but somehow they got along fine with this Olmec community, so much so that they rose to become the leaders of that society. One of the other new things that have been found is that the heads, the black heads of these great Olmec kings, wear a strange kind of headgear. It comes down halfway by the ears and circles the entire crown of the head. There's nothing like that anyplace else until they found, starting to find now, these old leather crowns that were studded with gold and brass that were used by the early kings of Mali. So only 2 places in the world do you see the same strange type of crown, amongst the Olmecs in Mexico and West Africa. So here again there's this parallel. Now, even older than this, I mean, they talk about, you know, our ancestors coming over on the Mayflower. This beats them by thousands of years. There has been another stupendous discovery. I mean, they're coming so thick and fast, probably because our technology is expanding, as you know. And as our technology expands, we're able to find out more faster. Over in Japan, and this relates to what we're talking about, was found an underwater city, the first ever found. It's right off the coast of southern Japan, by Okinawa, where the great battle was fought in World War II. And this underwater city extends for 311 miles on the bottom of the ocean floor. The deepest one is 100 feet, deepest building is 100 feet. The others are 20 and 40 feet. And they show streets and boulevards. They show pyramids. I've got photographs I'll show you tonight. These photographs have not well been publicized, but they will be. Great plazas, huge steps, all underwater. Now, this place is probably related to another old legend, and that is of the lost civilization of Mu. Mu was supposed to be a Pacific Island civilization that sank long ago, but before it sank, and while it was sinking, it was not a fast or catastrophic end for the most part. While the oceans rose when the ice melted at the glaciers that covered all of this area, you know, at one time. 10,000 years ago, they began to melt very rapidly, and when they melted, they flowed into the oceans of the world, and they raised the ocean level by about 100 feet. So this civilization goes back maybe 10,000 years. Hard to believe, but the evidence seems to suggest that the city at the bottom of the sea goes back that far. The reason I mention that is because all of the traditions of Mu and all of the research that has been done into it in our show there were 3 races of people on Mu. There was a Caucasian people. I'm going to use these terms, by the way, scientifically, not sociologically. This is just to define a people. A Caucasoid people, a Negroid people, and a Mongoloid people. Excuse me, not a Mongoloid people. A brown people. I don't even know how we put them in. And that was considered only legend, only myth, that these 3 races run there. They equally shared power politically. The reason why they did it was part of their solar religion. They believed that the sun has different phases of the year, and so they should share power. As the sun shares power with its light on the earth, so these 3 races had to share power equally. The reason why they believed that was they believed God manifested his power and his identity in natural law. What you see, the flowers growing, the sun, the stars. You can't see God, but you can see what God does. That's God's law. So if you live in harmony with God's laws, you see it in nature, you're doing God's will. That's what these people believed. And so by having the sun at different phases of the year, you share different power. Sometimes the white people, the Caucasoids would be the power. Sometimes the blacks would. Sometimes the brown would. That's their tradition. When this land sank, this high civilization brought some of its ideas to different parts of the world. The brown people became part of what is now Polynesia. And the Polynesian, I can tell you for a fact, the Polynesian legends are thick with stories about Mu. The Hawaiians have a people they call the Mu, who were there before they were. The white people apparently didn't do as well physically. They were more or less wiped out, or they dispersed and intermarried with people in China, it appears. But the blacks, however, went in 2 directions. And this is beyond legend now. Now we're moving into hard science. When Moor sank, or when Moor was in the process of being inundated by this great rising wave of water, they went in two directions. They went out to what is now known as Oceania and became a people known as the Negritos. And they also went towards Mexico and impacted this Olmec civilization. And the reason why we now know that is because there was a genetic trace done. You know about DNA now. That's getting a lot of play in the paper. DNA means you can trace the genetic code of a people. The genetic code of the, and there are still native blacks in Mexico. That's never been explained by archaeologists before Columbus arrived. DNA tests done on them. DNA tests done on the bones of some of the Olmec people, not all of them, the ancient remains, show a definite genetic trace, not to Africa only, but across the Pacific. When they found that out, they said that's got to be wrong. It just doesn't, there are no black people out in the Pacific, but there's this definite trace, lineage they could trace out towards Hawaii and beyond Hawaii. Then they began a worldwide match of DNA. Well, these strange black people, who do they match up with? They don't match up with Africans. They matched up with the Negritos in Oceania. It looks now, scientists believe, there was a central point from which they went in both directions. So this is a marvelous heritage. And, you know, some people say, well, you're a white guy, how can you talk about stuff like this? I get flack from this on both sides. The purpose of our magazine is to tell the truth about what happened to our country and our continents before Columbus. And if it shows that there were white Vikings here, and there were, we tell that. And if it shows that there were Asians here visiting, Chinese here visiting Mexico, we'll tell about that. And if there were blacks here, we have to tell that too. That's all part of our heritage. And I think it's thrilling and exciting for all of us. It's remarkable. You've had 4 of these major impacts that the black people have made to the Americas, not only before Columbus was born, but before even Spain or Italy existed. That's the kind of roots that are in this country. And by knowing that, and the more you know about it, it's an empowerment. You're really rooted. You have got a heritage which is more than slavery. Sure, there was slavery, but that's not all. That's a small part of it. Long before that, there's a heritage of kings, seafarers, religious missionaries, and they were all here. But it happened so long ago, there's just so little of it left. And that's basically my story. What connects it up is even the word Moor, because it's pronounced differently in different parts of Africa. And they call themselves Moor, Mu, Muir. There's all variations of that, so that even the name Muir. I'll leave you with one thing which is really interesting too that relates to this. The Mali kingdom, part of their religion, around 900 AD, they believed in a god called Vodun.